Hello and welcome to the Flex. I am Matt St. Jean here with Joe Howie. This podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com for more info. Also, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download the app, and use the code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. And get that code right down there. It's on the bottom. It does work. I've used it, so I recommend it. Joe, you're back from Mohegan Sun now. Not the best weekend. Not the weekend we thought we were going to get.
No, not at all. I am exhausted. I am down a lot of money. And Providence is riding a 2-game skid into Thanksgiving week. So morale is through the ceiling right now. That's sarcastic.
Yeah,
It's through the floor.
that definitely could have gone better for the Friars. They lose on Saturday to Miami in a game that started close and then very much wasn't from there on out. They lost 74-64. That set up a meeting with St. Louis. They had a second half lead there, led by as many as 13 before falling 76-73. Basically a 1-point game the way that ended up playing out before their last possession. Two teams there that received AP Top 25 votes last week. I don't know if they're going to end up. I don't think St. Louis is going to end up in the polls. Miami got killed by Maryland. So of all these teams, Maryland may be the one that actually ends up in the top 25 after all of this. But certainly all four teams here are ones that are expected to be playing in March.
Yeah, I don't so I think you're right. I think Maryland has the best resume out of the group of four to be ranked next week. Obviously, we have the worst, but Miami and St. Louis are tournament teams. I think that is clear cut. And I think if Providence can figure it out, we should also be a tournament team. I was texting you after the game in my fit of fury, as I always do after Providence loses. And I said that this weekend reminded me of the weekend in the 2019-2020 season when we lost to Long Beach State, followed by College of Charleston. Before anybody starts, typing the Twitter fingers, like, what are you talking about? Not in the quality of the loss, but in the feeling of these are teams that we played with and could have and should have beat. If you're up 13 on St. Louis with 11 minutes to go in the second half, you should win that game. If you're playing with Miami and they're just more athletic than you, okay, that's fine. I can swallow that pill. But that's a game that you have potential to win. It feels the same way because it sucks. It's right before Thanksgiving and it's back-to-back losses. And in the losses, you learn like, okay, we can play with these types of teams. So that's why, to me, it stings a little bit and it's reminiscent of that weekend. But otherwise, it sucks. I hate losing. Before Thanksgiving.
This is the first time the Friars have lost consecutive non-conference games since that tournament you referenced, the Long Beach State and Charleston games. So, there's a reason why that feels so familiar. Even that 2020-2021 team that struggled, they managed to get a win in the middle of their tournament where they really, the Maui Invitational in North Carolina, they managed to grab a win in the middle of that one. Yeah. So, disappointed. I think the hard part is that somebody had to lose 2 games in this tournament, and the Friars deserved to lose 2 games in this tournament the way they played. Neither one of these losses really bothers me in a vacuum. It shouldn't bother me as much that they came back to back, especially when it comes this early in the season. But it never feels good. Game 1 against Miami was one where the athleticism of the Friars, it did not translate. They looked like a less athletic team, and that's worrying, I think. And then game against St. Louis is one where they should have been the more athletic team. I mean, they looked like it for parts, but they were not the better mental team. And this Friars team is just not good enough to not have it mentally. Like, they're not physically gifted enough to not have it mentally, and they're not mentally gifted enough to not have it physically. They're just kind of in the middle for both.
Funny you say that about the physical and the mental connection. My girlfriend was sitting next to me tonight at the game, and she says, "You know what's funny is I'm watching them get back on defense, and it just looks slow, athletically slow, and cognitively slow. They're not picking up on where their man is. They're not picking up on any switches. Or there was one point, it was in the first half, and Providence got back on D, and Hopkins was in the paint, and Croswell kind of shoved him out to the wing to his man. Like, I think that's like a microcosm of the defensive performance we saw this weekend. Uh, Guys are still learning. Keep in mind, these are five guys that, besides obviously Bynum and Croswell played together last year, but for the sake of the argument, these are five guys that haven't played together before for consistent periods of time. And right now, 3 games under your belt, you're asking them to string together 2 defensive performances that are going to keep you in the conversation against 3 really good opponents, potentially 3 really good opponents. So I think cognitively, there's a lot of cleanup left to do. Physically, we have the potential to be there and play with these guys and run up and down the floor like St. Louis did to us tonight. I just think you need the cognitive aspect to get there first, and then the physical stuff will follow suit.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it's when you aren't all there mentally and you aren't locked in, you aren't playing as well together, you're going to play slower as well. That's just
Yeah.
a thing across sports. If you got to think before you act, you're not going to be as fast as the guy across from you.
Yep.
I think that was apparent at times against Miami. One of the things that Ed Cooley pointed out was the Hurricanes had only 7 assists on 27 made baskets. That means that they're not passing into stuff. They're just beating you off the dribble time and time and time again. And part of that came in transition. Part of that came with the second chance points that Miami was getting. But it's this for being such an athletic dude and for being able to force as many turnovers as Devin Carter can be able to produce. He's had more issues staying in front of people than I anticipated from somebody of his ability.
I think it was back-to-back defensive possessions tonight. Maybe it wasn't back-to-back, but they were certainly close to one another, where Devin Carter lost his man and had to foul him. And it wasn't an intentional foul. It was just like, you're faster than me, so I'm grabbing onto your arm kind of foul. And it was like a blatant it was blatantly like he's gassed and can't keep up with him. And it was kind of sloppy. Like, it just calling it what it is. It was very sloppy. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because Carter's supposed to be this defensively efficient player, and we're not making the argument that he's not, but you can see some of the inefficiencies here.
Yeah, and it's we knew that this weekend was going to be a really good test of Providence's guards. We thought that all 5 looked good in the first couple games, especially against Stonehill, as they should against an opponent of that level. Then you go against these guys, and they were just overmatched. I mean, I think there were points where all 3 guards who start looked like they were a liability on the floor, guys you just could not put out there, and
Yeah.
not great.
Noah Locke did not look like himself tonight. I mean, he went. I'm just pulling up the box score. 2 for 7 from 3.
Yeah.
2 for 10 from the field with only 6 points. If you're going to win a basketball game, that's got to be better. And I know, I know he is our sharpshooter, and he fits. I think he has a nice stroke. That's not going to cut it. And not against teams like this. Not against teams in Big East play. Against Ryder, maybe you get by. Against Northeastern, maybe you get by.
Yeah.
Tonight, last night, it doesn't work.
And Noah Locke is a guy who, quite frankly, does not give you a whole lot outside of shooting. He's not a huge guy. He's not going to create a ton off the dribble. He's a reasonably high effort player, and he's not like a massive liability at the defensive end or anything like that. He's just a little bit undersized, not the quickest dude for his size either, and it stands out sometimes. So when he doesn't shoot, it's hard to put him out there. And right now they're starting 3 guards that can't shoot. Bynum has completely lost his touch from deep, and Carter has never been a shooter, and Locke is ice cold as of late. I mean, he's in today against St. Louis in particular, and if your guards can't shoot, you're going to be in a world of hurt no matter what.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I know he had 14 last night and 15 tonight, But quite honestly, Jared Bynum looks like a shell of what he was last season. And maybe
15 points on 16 field goal attempts is not an accomplishment. Neither is 14 on 12.
no. I mean, right, like at face value, you're like, oh, he scored in double figures. You break it down a little more, you're like, okay, that's not nearly as efficient as he used to be. And maybe it's because we're looking at it in a condensed lens of conference play, which is really when he lit it up. But he's a shell of what he was last season. I think taking on more responsibility and more ownership of the point guard role has resulted in this. Because if you remember last year, there were times when Durham ran point and Bynum played off the ball. And now Bynum is primarily playing on the ball. And on a night when your backup point guard Allen Breed isn't playing and Pierre's only playing in the first half, that's a tough ask for Bynum to, be one of our primary scorers, but to also set the table for everyone else. That's a lot to do for a point guard.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. And he's kind of struggled shooting the three ball for a little bit now. This goes back to before, but it goes back to last February, really, the end of last February. He had a rough shooting day against Creighton in the game that ended up giving the Big East the Friars the Big East championship last year. It was something that kind of flew under the radar in that game because we were all obviously so excited about that. And he had 7 assists, so he didn't have a bad game. We didn't really shoot the ball that well. He has not found his stroke since then. From that Creighton game through the Miami one, Sports Reference does not have today's stats up yet. He shot 23.7% from deep, which is more in line with his career numbers before last February as well. And my big concern here is that the Jared Bynum we saw in February was a Jared Bynum who got hot for a month, and the real player is the one that we've seen for all of the other weeks he's been in Providence.
I also think it's a lot easier to get hot in a month when everyone else around you is doing well. I think the point you just made about Bynum's poor shooting performance flying under the radar during that Creighton game is a microcosm of this, because during that Creighton game, Reeves was hot, Durham was hot, Watts, all the seniors were shining. So it's okay for Bynum to slip under the radar. But right now, no one else is shining other than really Bryce Hopkins offensively. And now Bynum is it's glaring that, the threes aren't falling as consistently as we thought they were.
Yeah. And it's he doesn't have a single game with more than 2 3-pointers made since that Xavier 3 overtime game. And in the month of February, he hit 2 or more in every single game. In February, he was 4 for 5, 7 of 8, 4 of 8, 2 of 5, 2 of 5, 5 of 10 from deep. That is not necessarily sustainable, but the pace he's hit at lately is also that's too low. You don't need him to be a 50% three-point shooter. You need at least 33, 34% from him, maybe 35%. That's in the range where you need. He's supposed to be your secondary scorer as a guard. It's at least secondary perimeter scorer. And if your secondary perimeter scorer is shooting below 30%, you're in a really rough spot.
So tonight he took 5 threes. He was 0 for 5. Last night he was 1 for 7. If you can get him going 3 for 7 on a given night, I think that's an improvement from what we're seeing now.
2 for 5, 3 for 7. That's about the range you would like him to be in consistently.
Yeah.
And if that's what you get, if he hit 2 threes against St. Louis, Friars might win that game. If he hit 3 of them instead of just the 1 against Miami, it's a much closer game. These are close enough games that individual baskets start to matter a lot more, especially the St. Louis one.
You know what I will say, and this is kind of more of a positive takeaway. Yeah. We were given 20 opportunities at the free throw line tonight, and we made all 20. And I saw it throughout the game. And for anyone who's been in Mohegan Sun, they have the wraparound LED banner that shows the live stats. There was a point, I think we were 11 for 11. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. But I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want the announcers jinx. 17 for 17. I'm like flirting with it in my head. I'm like, ooh, we're going to go perfect from the line, but someone's going to miss a free throw. Game over. Obviously, pissed that we lost. Officials walking away with some dollars in their pocket from Travis Ford, but that's a good thing that you made 20 free throws. Like given what we saw a week ago to what we're seeing now at the free throw line, that's severe improvement. That's coaching, that's practice, that's repetition.
And I think most importantly, usually if you're a good free throw shooter, eventually the shots from the field will start to fall. And that's where I do think part of the issue with just shooting in general lately is the offense has not come together. Like guys are missing shots in rhythm that they shouldn't be missing, but they also are not taking enough shots in rhythm. Guys aren't moving the way they should be. Guys aren't connected. It seems like what's happening on one half of the court is not in sync with what's happening on the other half too. It's just the way the guys are cutting, and it almost seems like there's a side with 3 guys and there's a side with 2 guys, and each of them has a point man that'll run with the action on that side. And it's like, all right, well, that doesn't really get us anywhere.
There's a point in time tonight where Bynum's trying to get a screen from Croswell, and it was literally like the 2 of them at the top of the block, like just Croswell's not setting the screen the right way and Bynum's not moving the ball the right way, but the other 3 players didn't move. They just didn't move. So I don't know if this was an ISO pick and for 2 of them, but whatever was happening, it was definitely exactly what you just said, where you had 2 players doing something and 3 players doing something completely different. And some of the sets tonight were just infuriating. The final play of the game. Like, so our that's how we're going to win the game is we're going to have Bynum tuck it and run through 2 gigantic forwards like a running back and get tackled and not called.
Well, and we'll talk about the officiating later, but I think part of that too is the offense got kind of predictable at points. Like, the long shots weren't falling. You knew they only needed a 2. So you kind of knew they were going to get somebody coming at the basket. And the second you got a guard away from the rim, it's all right, well, he's probably coming downhill here. So they weren't going to respect any of the other actions. They know we got to protect the rim. Yeah. And that's why there wasn't a lot of space. I just went through and researched this because I was curious. As far as I can tell, that's only the second time under Ed Cooley the Friars have been perfect at the line.
Really?
From what I can tell, this is from a quick little sports reference search. If you can guess the other game, I will be very, very impressed.
We were perfect from the line.
Yeah. It's a home game. It was a non-conference game. It was while we were at PC.
Can you give me a year?
What year was this?
We were students, right?
Yeah. The 17-18 season.
Non-conference, at home. Give me a second. 17-18?
No.
It's not Minnesota, is it?
No, that's a good guess, though. You want the answer?
Wait, let me look at the slate quick. Just let me look at that schedule.
Yeah.
I won't look at the stats, I swear.
I can list the games for you if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. And I'll pick it out.
The home games. Houston Christian, Minnesota, Belmont, BC, Ryder, Brown, Stony Brook, and Sacred Heart. BC? No, not BC.
Damn, 0 for 2.
Yeah. I'll give you one more guess.
It wasn't that first game blowout, was it? The one that was in Alumni Hall?
It was the game against Belmont, which if I remember correctly, Kyron had a buzzer beater in that one.
That's the buzzer beater game. Yeah.
I missed that game, too. I didn't get to go to that one. I had a project due the next day.
That was the buzzer beater game?
I believe
Wasn't that Thanksgiving Eve? I thought that was the Thanksgiving. Yeah. No?
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Maybe I'm wrong here. Let me dig into this. Anyway, while I research this, Ed Croswell, I think. Well, we're talking about guys who returned and have not been as good as we hoped. Ed Croswell, I think the last 2 games had some really, really, really rough moments.
So against Miami, 2 points on 1 of 3 shooting with 6 rebounds, a block, a steal, a turnover, in 20 minutes of playing time. That is what we call in the industry not good.
To use a technical term.
To get technical on you guys. Tonight, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 4 of 10 from the field, perfect from the stripe, 1 turnover, 2 blocks. It doesn't feel like he played that way tonight. Not at all. Something that was really bugging me about Croswell is he did not look ready for any passes. 1. 2, you got to stop hitting the deck with the power dribbles when you get it in the paint. You get a pass here, you go right up with it. I'm 5'10", and you've played basketball with me. I play bigger than I should. Even I know you don't take it. You don't hit the deck with a power dribble in that situation. He does it every damn time, and then he turns the ball over every damn time.
It's frustrating. He does not look like a very strong player right now physically.
No.
He doesn't play with that says, and it's. I know we've had our issues with him. We've criticized him, but if you want an example of an undersized center who knows how to make it work in the Big East, Eric Dixon. He's been incredibly efficient, a very productive player in his college career because while he's smaller, he knows how to use his size. And you very rarely see him actually get trapped with the basketball or have issues with the ball under the hoop. You really didn't see issues with it for Croswell for the most part the last couple of years either. This is kind of a new thing for him. And maybe that comes with him being the focal point, not the focal point, but a focal point in the offense now instead of a guy who came off the bench. But Dixon's a guy who just is able to make things work in a way Croswell isn't. I don't know if he needs to throw on that film at any point, but he's an undersized center who plays like it, and it doesn't need to look like that.
The difference between Dixon and Croswell, I think, is Dixon stepped into a starting role earlier than Croswell. Like last season, Dixon had his ups, but he really had his downs too. I think the one thing advantage Croswell is Croswell's better in tight spaces under the rim. Shout out Terry Sullivan than Eric Dixon. If you put Eric Dixon against Adama Sanogo or Ryan Kalkbrenner, Dixon's losing that battle. Croswell is likely going to lose that battle too, but he has a little bit more finesse against bigger guys. That's the one nod that I'll give him.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side of that is that Eric Dixon knows he's not going to win some of those and takes his game away from the rim and is able to win in some other ways that we haven't really seen Croswell do it. Croswell doesn't take the threes. He's not going to – he plays – even though his size says he should be a 4, he plays the 5 and really doesn't step out all that often.
You know what's interesting? Great point is anytime you see Croswell and Clifton Moore on the floor at the same time, Croswell plays the 5 and Clifton Moore, who's 6'11", plays the 4. I find that fascinating because Clifton Moore's better defensively in the paint.
It's all about skill sets now. And I think that's where Clifton Moore, I think, was a little bit disappointing for me the last couple games. Yeah. He's not bad, but he looks overmatched. He looks like an A10 play. Like this is what is it? Croswell, Clifton Moore, Jared Bynum are all guys who got their start in the A10. And at various points this weekend, they looked like A10 players going against power conference players in ability and in talent and skill. Obviously, they're not locked into that because we've seen them play better than that. It's hopefully for the Friars, just a one weekend thing for them. But I mean, Moore had 2 blocks against Miami, and yet somehow it felt like every time they drove on him, didn't really matter that his arm was up. They were shooting around him without an issue.
I will say, I think Clifton Moore looked a little bit better defensively tonight, at least from, not maybe not in the box sheet, but there were times when St. Louis was pounding into him and he held his feet firm and they missed a couple of back-to-back hook attempts on him. I think he disrupts paint defense. Tonight he only played 11 minutes, which I think is an issue. If you're going to be successful down the line, him and Croswell got to split at least 20-20 apiece, or if you want to get fancy with it, play them at the same time. But you need Clifton Moore on the floor a little bit more than you did tonight and last night. I think that is a reason why we lost. But he holds his own defensively. Obviously, sample size is a little weird because he looked like a superstar against these mid-major teams, and now he's playing power conference opponents, and it's looking a little different. So I think you're right. There's a little bit of a litmus test there for him, which I think he'll grow through. But if for us as fans and spectators, if we want to be more satisfied with Clifton Moore, we need to see him on the floor more in situations like this, especially when Croswell's not giving you his best go. Even what's his name?
Rafael Castro.
He got he was off of the bench before Clifton Moore tonight, which I thought was surprising.
Yeah, that was very interesting. And I know we had said before this tournament we didn't think we were going to see a lot of Castro, and
No.
we saw more than I thought we would.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like the same player. Real nice flashes, but not finishing the plays, which
Yeah.
is good. It's like he's a really athletic guy, and it's like, all right, he looks like a Big East athlete in a lot of ways. He clearly has
Yeah.
Big East skills. He's still putting it together.
Yep.
So yeah, and we'll see. This takes time. I know Ed Cooley is not pleased with where this group is right now.
No.
I think this team probably does have some flaws that it may struggle to work out of too. Like, obviously this team has flaws.
I was gonna say I think that's a definite. I don't think that's a up for question.
Though I think the bigger concern is how it can address some of these flaws. I think some of this is easily fixable. Even that if the offense starts working better, I think some of the shooting from the guards will just come naturally as a result of that.
No.
And obviously, it isn't all bad. Both of these games were competitive, especially the St. Louis one. They had leads at various points in both of them. It isn't all bad. This isn't one of these guys are bad players. It's this team feels very mediocre at this moment, and mediocre in a Big East that does not look that strong through 2.5 weeks here is not going to get you into the dance. You got to be a little bit better. Plenty of opportunities here to get better and then show that you're better. But we're also in a spot where the Friars may need to win 11 or 12 Big East games to get an invite to the dance instead of 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Again, depending on how things work out here. Bryce Hopkins too is like he's an interest. I thought he played his best basketball of the season today against St. Louis. I thought he looked really rough against Miami at certain points. And it's the turnovers. And I think there's a mindset. Yeah. 6 made field goals, 6 turnovers against Miami. That's not going to get it done.
No.
He looked more assertive today, though. He looked more engaged mentally, which I was happy to see. When I made the comment about how you play slower if mentally you're not all there and you're still figuring it out, it looked like he figured it out and played like a more athletic player today against St. Louis. Part of that's probably the level of athleticism at St. Louis there with the Billikens. I couldn't go this whole podcast without saying Billikens.
I don't even. What is a Billiken? Is it like a play on pelican?
No, it's not at all. I think it's a doll. But yeah, it's just it was refreshing to see him start to take over a little bit and play really well. For as much as we've talked about the legacy Providence has with guards and the centers that have been at the center of Ed Cooley offenses for a couple of years now, the hallmark of an Ed Cooley team is having a stretch 4 or 3, a forward of some kind, a wing guy who can basically give you a little bit of everything. That's been the bread and butter. Chris Dunn isn't what he is without Ben Bentel down there helping him out. Cartwright isn't what he is without Bullock down there.
Emmett Holt.
And that team in 2020 isn't what it is without really good minutes from Alpha Diallo and Khalif Young. It kind of doing a lot of that stuff. And this goes back to before those teams too. It's been a long-standing thing that Ed Cooley teams have thrived off of a guy in that spot. Hopkins showed, I think, the best glimpse we've seen of that against a quality opponent today.
I think you're absolutely right. Hopkins is so there. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. This has been a long weekend, so excuse my my mushy brain. But Hopkins is the kind of guy where it's like you look at him in the preseason, and you're like, this is him. He's gonna be that guy. He's gonna be one of those household names among the Friar faithful, where it's like he's the guy. So far, he's lived up to that expectation. I think of Greg Gant as another person who did not live up to that expectation. He logged a majority of the minutes at the 4 spot, this hybrid position that we're talking about in the 2020-2021 season, and that team was not great. So I think I think you're right where, this is the person you have to build the squad around, and I think Hopkins is living up to the role nicely, because even in a night like last night against Miami where he didn't play great. Oh, that's the wrong box score. Sorry.
Too many box scores.
I have so many tabs open right now.
Yeah. He was the leading scorer against Miami.
and he flirted with a double-double. He had 8 rebounds. So if his floor right now is 6 turnovers, 16 points, 8 rebounds, that's promising. That's real promising.
I think the real push here for Hopkins doesn't come from the stats as much as it does from the mentality and the way the offense runs. Um, like we all saw the games Alpha Diallo had where you at the end of the game you're like, he had 15 points and 10 rebounds. I feel like I didn't even notice him out there because
Yeah.
of just where he's getting the looks and everything. And to an extent, Hopkins has had some of those too. We also remember the games where Diallo was able to take over the offense, drive to the basket really well, pick his shots, make some plays happen on defense. That's what they need. And you talk about Greg Gant and how he struggled. We all know it turned the Friars around after that. They found their 4 and Noah Horkler.
Yep.
Once he actually found his game in the games where he was good in that 2020-21 season, were the games where the Friars played really well. They need that kind of step up. I think the next step for that is Hopkins needs to show he can hit 20 points. He needs to show he can call his shots. He needs to show that the offense can run through him, and then he'll pass out to other people.
I agree. I totally agree. Side note, I met Bryce Hopkins last night in the lobby of Mohegan Sun. He's a really nice guy. Just wanted to point that out and took a picture with him. He's a nice guy.
I'm glad to hear that. They all seem like good guys. Cooley seems to know how to pick them for the most part.
Yeah. I think, too, I just wanted to take a bird's eye view, look at this weekend from a human standpoint, not a box sheet or basketball. Like, this is the first time that these guys are playing outside of Rhode Island this season. Keep in mind, like, first three games of the season were home games against Bunnies. Even, like, I get it, it's 45 minutes from Providence, but this isn't the Biltmore in downtown Providence where you're spending the night at the hotel and then you're going back to your dorm. Like, this is the first time they've taken a not a true road trip, but a trip away from home, and I think it showed. So you cut them a little slack because they are college students in that respect. But you know what? It still sucks to lose, and I think Cooley holds this team to a higher standard than what we saw. And I thought that was reflected in his post-game press conference tonight. If you haven't watched it yet, it's 6 minutes, but it's really efficient. Like, he gets his point across, and then he gets up and goes.
Yeah. None of us on Zoom had questions for him either Saturday or Sunday. It was very much ours to let him go do his thing. And I also think it's worth remembering that, like, this is basically an entirely new group of players that's coming in, and it's a younger group than what we saw last year. He's always had his best seasons when he's got a lot of veterans that he can get to buy in and valuing that mental toughness. And I think this team has showed mental toughness in spurts. They've hung tough in these games and they've battled. It's not all the way there yet, but I think they have that quality. Sometimes it just takes a little bit for that maturity to kick in. Takes a little bit. Like, I think we've ironed out who the top 8 are in this rotation.
Oh, absolutely.
Now it's whittling down how you balance the playing time there, and they're still figuring that out. They do not have the answers there yet. I thought Corey Floyd Jr. gave them enough minutes, quality minutes today to think about maybe bumping him up into that top 8 at times or making it a top 9 where he's going to see real stuff. It was limited minutes, but he looked decent in them.
No, he did look good.
Yeah, and it's all right. They're still figuring this out. This team's a work in progress. Look around all of college basketball right now, and there's a lot of teams dropping games they shouldn't. So big picture, dropping 2 close games on a neutral site to teams that are good teams, that's not going to matter. At some point, you got to beat good teams. It doesn't have to happen today. They're going to get one more real good look here in the non-conference when they go to TCU, and then you get conference play. So if you win that TCU game, you should go into Big East play at 11-2. Win 10 Big East games, you're probably in.
At the end of the day, when the selection committee sits down in March and they say, oh, Providence lost by 10 to Miami and by 3 to St. Louis in mid-November, that's not going to make a difference because we lost to 2 tournament teams and we played with them while playing mediocre basketball. So I think you're right, Matt. Work to be done, absolutely, but it's not the end of the world. It sucks and it stings, and having it happen on back-to-back nights at what Cooley calls the Dunk South kind of stinks because it was filled with Friar fans. I can attest to that. A lot of
Especially
black
for
and
the
white.
Miami game.
Yeah,
You could hear
not
that loud.
yeah, but it's not the end of the world. It stings, doesn't feel good, and there's glaring discrepancies and things that need to be worked on. But you do what you're supposed to do the rest of conference play and the rest of non-conference play, excuse me. Then you go into conference play with a chip on your shoulder. So that's all you need to do. Everyone thinks of us as the asterisk cheating reigning champions. So clean house the rest of conference play, non-conference play, and then you go into conference play and you kick some ass.
Yeah, that's the goal here. And these are kids, basically, very young adults who are playing this sport. They're going to be inconsistent. There's going to be a learning curve when there's a lot of new guys, and it takes time. That was basically the big message from Cooley in the press conference was, we're not where we need to be, but this is 5 games in. We're going to work on it. We're going to get better. And I have faith that they will be better enough to finish top 5 in the Big East. I don't know yet, but better by the end of the year, I think they will be.
Given the way things are going, I don't know who's finishing in the top 5 of the Big East this year.
Let me tell you, filling out those power rankings yesterday, I have a good idea who like the top 3 teams are right now. I feel
honestly
good about probably top 2 at least. I feel good about.
I was gonna say top 2 I think are clear cut, but after that the waters are murky.
I know top 2. I know bottom 1. The rest is
you know the star at the top of the Christmas tree, and the tree skirt. But how all the other ornaments fall in, no idea.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. Cleaning up a couple things here. First of all, it was that Belmont game. That was the Kyron Cartwright buzzer beater. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I don't know why I was thinking I missed that for some assignment. I think I missed another game around there.
Thanksgiving Eve.
Yeah. Another thing we didn't talk about here, which I think we have to touch on briefly, the officiating in the St. Louis game. The officiating in the whole tournament was not great. I didn't like it in the Miami one either. It felt weird. But the last minute of the St. Louis game was inexplicable. And in particular, they just called continuation on that layup.
Yeah, they did.
You can argue it's a block. You can argue it's a charge. There is no world where the bucket should have counted.
No.
The only one is the NBA.
And this isn't the NBA.
No.
Not inexplicable.
What should have happened, he should have gotten 2 free throws, and the Friars get the ball. The worst case for Providence, there should have been a tie game. And I don't think they ran their set at the end there very well. I don't think they were very organized. The fact that they called the timeout, tried to run stuff, had to call another timeout, I think says a lot about where they are on offense. The Friars lost this game, but the refs did not call it as fairly as it should have. I mean, they blew that call. And
no,
it's Providence's fault for letting it get that close. It's the ref's fault for making that bad call.
You and I will hang our hat on this, that we will never ever blame a loss on poor officiating. But damn, tonight's officials did not help the cause. Not even close. And what upsets me about officiating is you look at a guy like Ed Cooley, who in the post-game press conference, like, we got screwed on some of those calls. He's still tipping his cap to the refs. Meanwhile, you have Travis Ford, and this isn't something that was seen on the broadcast, got on his hands and knees at midcourt and held a towel in his mouth at the refs after one of the plays, like a dog. I'm not kidding you. You ask anyone that was in the arena tonight, the St. Louis coach, Travis Ford, did that on the court. And Providence fans that were a few sections behind me were screaming at him, hey, go lay on the ground again. Like, you have a full-grown man acting like that, and then he starts getting calls versus Cooley. Like, there's a reason it's called working the refs. Like, Jay Wright used to be really good at it.
Like it or not, Dan Hurley is actually usually pretty good at it too. A very different strategy at it, but he's usually pretty good at it.
Except for when he calls them out in the post-game press conference and gets reprimanded by the Big East.
Still one of the funniest moments in Big East history since I've been covering this stuff is getting an immediate email that was a notice of a censure of Dan Hurley.
The conference would like to we don't stand by Dan Hurley's comments. That was great.
Still fantastic. Yep. We did have one more conversation we wanted to
I know.
have
Here
on
we
here,
go.
which we said we weren't going to have until the podcast. Friars debuting 2 new uniforms this tournament.
All right,
We
let's get
got
into it.
Saturday, we see gray uniforms with black trim, black numbers, and the Friar head on the front.
Love
Sunday,
it.
we see the black uniforms with white trim, white numbers, gray outlines on the numbers. And was it Providence written on the front? I'm assuming not
Yeah,
Friars.
it's the inverse of the white.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I have never and will never be a fan of a logo on the front of a basketball uniform because when I see a logo on the front of a basketball uniform, that to me always says practice jersey. It's a penny. I have, pretty sure, this is my old thing. It's actually my dad's old one. It's like a reversible Friars penny,
I have one
from
of
the
those
90s,
too.
one of the black and white ones, and I'm pretty sure that has the Friar head logo on the front. And that's all I can think of the entire time on Saturday. I love the gray uniforms outside of that, except I wish they had the white outline on the numbers. That's my only critique.
No, I
But the
agree. The
entire
old one
time
had
I'm
the white.
looking at, what was that?
I agree because the old gray had the white outline.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's unless it looks bad in the pictures or something, but it looks like black numbers with gray outlines. So it looks like the same numbers that they have for the white home uniforms, not different numbers. So it's just those stitched onto a gray jersey, and it looks kind of weird to have an outline the same color of what's underneath it. But that's a whole. It was like I cannot get over, and the logo being like the same size as the numbers too really adds to that, where it just looks to me like unbalanced.
Is it my turn now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I like the jerseys. I have basically the complete opposite opinion of you on this, Matt. There was, I forget, it might have been 2020. Arkansas debuted the jerseys with the
I
Razorback.
remember us having this conversation.
And I tweeted at PC Athletics that a gray alternate with the Friar head and the number underneath would look fantastic. I think you're right. I think the number to logo ratio is too similar. The number should be smaller on the front. If they were, I know you don't like it. I think you don't think it's a successful pull off. I think it is a successful pull off. If it was to be perfect, that number would be smaller. I think they screwed up on that ratio. But I love the Friar head on the front. I think that is a great move.
See, I think part of my issue too is that like the standard ratio for a basketball uniform is that you have something wide with a small number underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if the Friars had a wider logo, it would look better. Like if they use the version of the Friar head that has like the word mark and stuff on it, which I don't even know if they use anymore. That might be. I think that's outdated. It has been for a while.
That's not the primary logo anymore.
No, I don't know if they use it at all.
They don't. They got rid of it.
Yeah, if they still had that though, I think that would look better because you're going to end up with something wider with the number underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's one uniform in basketball that I think gets away with this whole thing, and it's the Golden State Warriors ones because they found a way to fit the number into the circle logo on the front in a way that looks good.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I see both sides to the argument. Personally, this is something that I literally tweeted at them, and I'm going to find that tweet and resurface it. So guys,
if you don't like uniforms, you can personally blame Joe.
Do it. I want all the credit for these uniforms. I basically came up with the idea. In fact, I'm going to send PC Athletics an email. I want compensation for this IP.
Yeah.
No, I'm only kidding. I do
Unless
think
they want to pay you, in which you're not kidding at all.
Oh no, if they want to pay me, I'm not at all kidding. I would love the extra money. No, but in all seriousness, I don't think the picture that they tweeted out did the uniforms justice. Because they look
worse picture than the uniforms actually looked. I thought they looked better on the court than they did in the photo.
Yeah, the gray is much more prominent when you see it in person. It's just a weird lighting in the picture. I don't know what it was. But I do think we both agree on this, Matt. It's that the black uniform, which is the same version of the white, but the colors are inversed, I think that's the best uniform they've unveiled in a long time. Maybe up there with the black throwbacks.
Yeah, it's really good. My only concern with it is that it might be too similar to the throwbacks in that you might not need both. But it looks really good. The white pops off it really well.
It does. It really does.
It did briefly feel like I was watching a Butler game with the black uniform with like white trim on it.
Mhm.
because they used to do that for
They
their
used
road
to.
ones, and like with all the white up on the shoulder, Butler does that. So it briefly felt like I was watching a Butler game, but once I got past that and got used to it, really really sharp, really
we wa-
sharp, huge.
we walked into the arena and we were a few minutes late. So for at the concessions they have TVs with the game on, and my brother and my cousin Brady, who was with us too, looked at the TV. They said, "Oh, we're wearing the throwbacks already." So I think you're right. They do look like the throwbacks at first glance, which I think is a little concerning.
Yeah,
But
it's intentional too, because it's
yeah,
the design of this uniform is basically a modernized version of the throwback, where they take like the double stripe
hmm
motif and they just like play with it a little bit in different
yeah,
places all over the uniform, which I enjoy. There's a part of me that wishes instead of that they just took the throwbacks and modernized them a little bit. Like if they unveiled this uniform but without like the tapered stripe, like if they took the throwback and just threw the like modern word mark on it, I might like that more.
See, I don't know. I
Honestly,
so it's,
I just like the
I love
throwback
the
might just be my
throwbacks.
favorite uniform, and I might
They
just
are my
wish they
favorite.
kept that all the time.
I think they're keeping them because a lot of the promotional stuff they've put out they've used the
oh,
throwbacks.
what I mean is that I might just wish they wore the black uniforms as their primary road uniforms, and
Oh, agreed.
just wear that uniform every time you're away from home.
There's something about the rounded Providence in the traditional letter. It's just that is
Block
the
letter.
nicest. It's the
So
shorts, the trim. They just everything they did with the throwbacks was like chef's kiss. Like they did it perfect.
yeah, I whipped up a concept once, which I texted you at one point. This was back during COVID, so it's been a while. I'll have to see
Yeah.
if I
Oh, I
can.
remember this.
Yeah, and it basically take that black and white road throwback, and then have a
Put
home version of it that says Friars on the front, and basically, um, I think I had similar striping to the black and yellow one, but
yeah.
instead of yellow, put the silver on it at home. So you're black and white on the road, black, white, and gray at home, and then you can have a gray version of that too as an alternate, and then you can have a version where on the home one you replace the gray with the pink, and
Yep.
you have a version where you replace it with the yellow if you want to go with that throwback too, and it gives you some flexibility with kind of that classic look. That's still the ideal for me, but what they have right now is very good. Some of the better uniforms in college basketball or the Big East.
I agree.
What I am curious about is I did they is this a custom uniform or is this a template? Because I think the last ones were some kind of a template, and part of me wonders if now that they got a Sweet 16, if they got an upgrade from Nike, and that's why they got something a little bit fancier this year.
I was gonna say I think that is correct because last year they had the the same run of the mill Providence uniforms, and then after that, they had the two throwbacks. They had the throwback home and the throwback black. It looks like they're getting a little bit more creative integrity with these.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think Cooley winning, and this goes back to the conversation we had at the beginning of the season. Providence getting national recognition last season has put them on the map a little bit more with respect to college basketball and like just the swag that comes with it. So I think like you're gonna see like they're getting some cooler gear, cooler uniforms. They're going to start, maybe not tonight, but maybe some calls will start bouncing our way the same way they do for Villanova and UConn.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I've always really enjoyed and envied is if you win a national championship and you're a Nike school, you get the gold tag on your uniform that
Oh,
Villanova has up on the back. So that's kind of the next step there is
would love that.
we got to get that at some point. You got to have the gold tag. Speaking of uniforms and merch,
And
you can
tags.
you can get some flex stuff if you'd like it. Joe, you wanna plug that?
Yeah, so for all you Flex faithful that have been with us through the ride, store's up. The link is in our link tree, which is tagged in our Twitter and our Instagram. If you don't have social media, you can go to houseenterprise.com, check out the merch tab. We are
House-enterprise.com, yes.
house-enterprise, thank you, Matt.com. Hit the merch tab. We have t-shirts, polos, hats, vests, you name it. If you want to get this stuff in before the holidays, before December 24th, got to do it by Black Friday, this Friday, or else it won't be in here in time. I am spending all of my money on that website because that's my Christmas shopping this year. Gonna be checking off boxes with that.
And I think we're gonna have a couple new things coming up in the next couple days on there. I've had computer issues, so I've been trying to get some files over to Joe for about a week now, and he's been asking me. And between looking through hard drives, looking for these files, and having to send my computer over to the shop for a repair, it hasn't happened yet. Do you have the
I
files
actually
for you now, though? So I'm gonna be able to get them to you after this.
I actually fixed the logo on Photoshop the other day and sent it
Oh my god!
to Will. So I
Oh,
forgot to
wow.
tell you that. Yeah.
All right, well, that'll make that easier. I can send you a
Yep.
cleaner version too. So we'll figure that out.
Cool.
There's merch on there.
Yep.
Definitely go check that out. Anything you buy, we would appreciate that. It'll help us out. So
Yeah.
yeah, we appreciate that. I don't think we're doing an episode this week during Thanksgiving. I want to be away with family, so I think we're gonna go next weekend before our next one. Does that sound
Yeah.
about right?
Just take the time. It's who are we playing on Wednesday?
Yeah. So Wednesday, the Friars are going to get Merrimack. It's a 7:00 game there on FS2 night before Thanksgiving, and then on Saturday they get the 4 p.m. game against Columbia on FS2. Both of these teams are outside the top 300 on KenPom. There isn't a whole lot to say about these games other than that the Friars need to win them, and probably in a pretty convincing fashion.
Mm-hmm. We talked about expectations going into this weekend, and I said you want to come out 1-1, or you want to at least compete even if you come out 0-2. We hit the latter. Expectations for Thanksgiving week is you beat these opponents and you blow the doors off of them, especially just considering what happened and the tune-up that's needed. You blow the doors off these teams.
Yeah. After those two, they're heading down to Texas for the Big East Big 12 battle there. They're going to face a TCU team that is in an interesting spot right now. We're going to have more on that later. I know I did that little opposition research on Miami. Hopefully we can get one of those for TCU for you guys. You can hear from somebody down there and get to know that school a little bit better before that game and what to expect. I'll also say here with the holidays coming up, if you want to watch a lot of basketball this week, a lot of tournaments, I have an article up on the site right now that lists all of the Big East teams, the events they play in, and when they could play, who they could play, which was it's a pain to get all that information. So I put it all in one place for you. If you want to look at stuff, there's some really good games this week. This is Sunday that we're recording this. I know tomorrow is Creighton against Texas Tech in the afternoon.
A good game. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to have that on my other screen here while I'm working. Definitely gonna do that. Yep. PK 85 at the end of the week, which has some really good stuff. 3 Big East teams playing at that event. Maui Invitationals this week. St. John's and Marquette are in a pair of interesting ones. And somehow, at this point, the only Big East team with a tournament win, in-season tournament win, is Georgetown.
Oh, the irony.
You got to extend Patrick Ewing, I think.
You know what, though? Patrick Ewing went into his contract negotiation today and said that, and they extended him for another 14 years. So he's not going anywhere, guys.
And everybody was thrilled about that.
Oh man! All right.
Yeah. I think that's gonna do it for us on this one. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and see you next Sunday. Probably. Yeah. I'm gonna be traveling on Saturday.
A week from today.
Yeah. We'll see you next Sunday. Have a good week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. That's Joe Howie. I'm Matt St. G, and follow us on Twitter. And we are gonna see you next time.